Namaste, you're on the right stand. I am Anand Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chinese have now come out in the open to endorse the Taliban. What does that mean? What does that imply? The dragons tango with terror. The dragons dance with the Taliban. What will it imply? Is it looking to only further its expansionist designs or secure its already billions of dollars that have been invested into the BRI and the CPEC? Or does it think that it can use the Taliban to further the designs of a proxy war, keep India and thwart India at bay, and then continue to push forth and somewhere do what the East India Company did? Use trade, economics, infrastructure and development to colonize nations all the way up to Africa. So all of Central Asia, South Asia and Africa, and that's the domination. This is the game it is also playing in many countries in Europe. This larger design can be very, very dangerous because if you decide to ride a tiger, then the danger is when you decide to get off it because you can't. And what this would do, and the day it turns around back at you, will it not consume everyone? That's the biggest risk the Chinese are taking. But Xi Jinping's ambition perhaps getting the better of his judgment, or the Chinese think that they can do what the British, the Russians and the Americans have not been able to do over the last 100 odd years. That is, dominate, rule and control Afghanistan. Let's try and understand this CCP Taliban tango first up, ladies and gentlemen, the tilt that's happened. This is the meeting that they had around the 6th of September where they met with each other. And this is the top Taliban leader. These are UN proscribed terrorists. China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and it is them under their 1267 sanctions committee that this lot is all sanctioned. But they are all sitting there and enjoying and exchanging pleasantries. What does this imply for us? Let's try and understand what is it that the Chinese have already done. Not only has this delegation gone on the 6th of September, 24 hours before they announced the government, and just about 24 to 36 hours after the DGISI gets there, they have also said they will give up to $31 million in aid. This is what has been announced, saying we are going to give it to you. They are going to provide them medical supplies, food supplies, winter supplies, and say we would also give you our so far ineffective COVID-19 vaccines which have only increased COVID cases, not addressed them. 3 million vaccine doses in the first batch. This is what they are coming to. And they are also there rushing in to provide anti-epidemic and emergency material. So this is one of the first steps. They are saying we will help rebuild economy and society. Rebuild, just like they tried to rebuild Inner Mongolia, rebuild Xinjiang, rebuild the society of Tibet. They've already consumed 2 or 3 nations. This is the next one that they feel that they are going to be able to consume now. And the Taliban have said China are important partners. What is it that they are set to achieve? Let's try and have a look at that. The big gains. It opens trade routes to Middle East, Africa via the Gwadar port. Then it expands OBOR and the BRI dimensions altogether. And of course CPEC, because they want to extend CPEC from into Pak-occupied Jammu Kashmir, Pakistan, and then all the way up to perhaps Kabul from Peshawar. Access to huge lithium reserves in the Afghan, and of course this entire debt trap strategy, rare earth minerals which goes into the making of phones, communication devices, satellite and space equipment. There's a lot of missiles. Ensures Central Asia shuts the eyes to the Uyghur repression. And it also enables the security of Chinese businesses on CPEC. One of the things they would turn around and say, please tell the Taliban, please tell TTP, don't target our people and our establishments and whatever they're doing in Pakistan. It adds to the pressure on India and Jammu and Kashmir, because then they have another instrument which they can use to continue to keep us in a state of flux and thwart our growth story so that they can continue to grow. So these are the expansionist plans. Now, where is it that they want to do it? What are the dimensions and the dynamics? All of this becomes very, very critical. Let's ask this question straight up. Is now the Taliban and Afghanistan under this Taliban an instrument for the CCP's expansionist plans? Let's ask the question. Now the fact is, Afghanistan crisis is what we will discuss. We'll try and go across to our guests in just a bit. Now, the other aspect, ladies and gentlemen, which stands out is this entire region. If you could picture the map where Afghanistan is, where Pakistan is, where that entire that Wakhan corridor is, all of that the Chinese want to control, and they will now be hovering and covering India from all three sides, and of course that engagement with Iran. So in this entire regional dynamic, it is going to be a huge challenge. We'll try and go across to our guests. This BRIC statement also that has come through at this point is an irony, because there are two nations which are trying to legitimize a group of terrorists trying to run a country, while trying to say that we will not allow Afghanistan to be a hotbed for terrorism. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra is with us, former diplomat. Colonel Lawrence Sellen is back with us. Dr. Shrikant Kondapalli is with us. And we also have Andrew K. Leung. My greetings to all of you. But this turn of events tends to befuddles me, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Frankly, the Chinese are sitting there engaging with the Taliban, and today Xi Jinping is a signatory to a joint statement which says that we will not allow Afghanistan to become a hotbed for terrorism. A country run by terrorists, what else will it be?
Well, China is now the ideal twin of Pakistan's ISI. It is doing exactly what ISI had been doing for the last 20 years, running with the hare, hunting with the hound, fooling Americans all the time, while pampering Taliban and protecting Taliban. So what China is doing now is a multi-dimensional game. Number one, it is saving its BRI, as you said, because 3 of the important routes of BRI pass through Xinjiang. So it does not want Uyghur terrorists or Uyghur extremists to be active there. It is also protecting CPC, because it is worried that TTP or some of the other terror groups may increase their attacks on the CPC route. So it wants Taliban to be as friendly to it as possible. The third, of course, is the economic dimension. The mineral wealth of Afghanistan is so far unexploited. Some of these, as you pointed out, are rare earth, which are extremely important, not just for China, but also for the rest of the world. So it will have a monopoly of all that. The third and equally important element is the terror element. If they have the control of terror and the terrorists, then it means they have the keys to the blood bank of terror in the world. And today, with Taliban government in place, with all the designated terrorists of the United Nations forming senior ministerships in the new government, China and ISI could not be happier, because if they have them under control, then they know which direction to direct their energies. So from all sides, at the moment, it seems that they have got their corners covered. But what a pity. It seems the morality in international relations of the last century is passé. It's a gone story. Today, the new story or the new dimension in international relations is what this permanent member of the UN Security Council is doing. Taliban is not even sworn into the government. It's another matter that it is not coming in, stepping into the government in any recognized form of route. There's no election, there's no handing over of the charge. It just says that we are now the bosses of Afghanistan. And China is applauding it. In fact, even before Pakistan stepped in, Pakistan sent in its terror master, the DGISI, but China welcomed them on 19th September itself, much before anyone else in the world. So we have a strange situation where a permanent member of the Security Council, who's supposed to hold a mirror of civilization and civil behavior to the world, is now encouraging terrorists onto their power game.
True, but the fact is, Shrikant Kodapalli, how is this being allowed to play? Because this means, doesn't the US realize that so far, all right, for 20 years they were giving the Chinese cover fire, but now them pulling out like this and nothing going as per the Doha agreement or the peace plan, now a bunch of terrorists in control of a nation and China having a free play here, there is no semblance of control. How is it going to be beneficial to anybody the way things are playing out right now?
Well, it is not clear what exactly is the deal between the withdrawing American forces and the Taliban. But what is clear is that the 6 countries which are invited for the inaugural includes prominently China. And China announced a $30 million assistance to the Taliban. And Taliban, of course, requires the aid from other countries. Partly because the current revenues of the Taliban is just over $2 billion. $1.5 billion is their drug money, revenues from drugs. $500 million roughly is from customs revenue. So with $2 billion, you can't run the government. And so the begging bowl has already begun and China had extended. China's game plan here is, of course, they are passing through the ISI of Pakistan and they have supplied a lot of intelligence. And when the Panjshir attacks took place, the Pakistani Air Force had used the JF-17 supplied by China. And the drones that were also used were mainly from China and Turkey. So to that extent, they have a role in the internal aspects of the Afghanistan. Although China stated it doesn't want to intervene, it doesn't intervene in internal affairs, but actually it is doing the same in Afghanistan. Number one, through the Hekmatyar group in Taliban, one of the factions. Secondly, by giving aid and by also suggesting to a kind of quid pro quo. The Chinese quid pro quo is as long as the Taliban is not supporting the East Turkestan Islamic movement by some Uyghurs in Xinjiang, the Chinese are satisfied, number one. Number two is, of course, protecting China's investment, trade and others in terms of the Bamiyan iron ore project, Amu Darya oil basin, the Ainak copper mine facilities. These are some which the Chinese have suggested too, with 2 conditions. One is protection of the Chinese. Secondly, the profits generated by these have to be legitimately handed over to China. That's a big call at the moment because the Taliban itself is not controlling much. According to some reports, they only have about 15% of favorable opinion within Afghanistan. This suggests then that it's a very shaky foundation at this point of time. So China is extracting its pound of flesh by suggesting all these with $30 million explicitly, but we do not know how much behind the scenes. Many Chinese have been withdrawn from Afghanistan except for the embassy. But a year ago, the Chinese spy ring has been busted and nearly 20 of them have been sent back to China. But it appears that today China has huge telecommunication networks within Afghanistan, in addition to logistics, in addition to intelligence and other, which in conjunction with the ISI, they have been doing this in Kabul. So the quid pro quo, we do not know whether it will work it out on Xinjiang. The Chinese have promised international protection for the Taliban in the Security Council and the various other multilateral fora. So we have to see, and I think if there is any ETIM blast in Xinjiang, or there is the Chinese being blown up in Pakistan, Afghanistan areas, especially as we saw in the Dasu hydroelectricity project, 9 Chinese were killed and 2 killed in Quetta in Balochistan. The Chinese Global Times mentioned that they will attack the Pakistanis with missiles. So this is a new trend, probably learning from the Americans in terms of the Tomahawk missile strikes. The Chinese will also impose costs on both Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we have to see how the coalition now between China, Pakistan, and the Taliban will be able to run the Afghan affairs.
Right. Now, let me bring in Colonel Selin and Andrew also in this, and then we'll circle back to Ambassador Rajiv Dogra and to Shrikant Kondapalli again, Dr. Shrikant Kondapalli again. But Colonel Selin, how do you see matters playing out? Are you of the opinion, or would you agree if I say that the Chinese are going to end up doing the same things that the Russians and the Americans did over the last 40 years? And this is just the beginning. They are also wading into a cesspool, and they will only come back, get out hurt.
Well, I'm not optimistic that China will make all the same mistakes, and therefore we need to be prepared to counter what China is doing. We're on the cusp of a major geostrategic shift in the region. We're facing an alliance of China, Pakistan, and the Taliban. Now, China wants to dominate South Asia economically and militarily, and it will do so economically through the China-Pakistan economic corridor, but it also intends to build military bases, in particular in Balochistan and the Arabian Sea. It has also expressed its intent to put military assets at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Now, China wants to outflank and isolate India. Now, the role of Pakistan and the Taliban is to use Islamic terrorism to keep India occupied and off balance. So we need to develop countermeasures for all these moves that this new alliance will be taken, the alliance of China, Pakistan, and the Taliban. For example, we should prevent as much as possible the Taliban from consolidating power in Afghanistan by supporting all the anti-Taliban elements. We need to weaken Pakistan sufficiently through diplomatic and economic sanctions. For example, blacklisting on the Financial Action Task Force. We should consider supporting ethnic self-determination, particularly in Balochistan, upon which the China-Pakistan economic corridor and China's military expansion depends. We should also retain the option of surgical military strikes against terrorist bases in Pakistan. So we need to have a strategic plan to counter the moves of this new alliance in South Asia.
True, but what are the chances that you think that China will take control of Bagram? And if they get hold of the Bagram Air Base, then they dominate South Asia.
Well, they've already announced it. China has announced that they plan to put economic and military advisors in Bagram Air Base. So I think that decision has already been made by China.
So that means then you will have the JF-17s and Chinese military at the Bagram Air Base. And that also fulfills this entire area. So that means India, the entire region, Iran, Turkestan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and even up to Africa, they have a base now in this region which the US had all along.
Well, I think it's even worse than that. As I said earlier, China wants to build military bases in Balochistan on the Arabian Sea, which is at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. Now, they already have a naval base in operation at the mouth of the Red Sea to the entrance of the Suez Canal. So any military naval or air bases that China builds in Balochistan on the Arabian Sea will connect directly to that and then back to its bases in the South China Sea. What China intends to do is to control the vital maritime lanes of the northern Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
So it's putting bases at choke points all across the region. And this is a great danger to the United States and to India and to any nation that uses those sea lanes.
True, and it is because they know the fact that there is a choke that is going to be implied upon the Chinese in the Straits of Malacca. And if the Quad comes in, so this is the counter Quad aspect which will come into play. The other aspect is that they are also going to be investing billions, close to $300 billion is going to go in only into the CPEC, and there is so much more that is going to go into OBOR. So if they have to protect all those business interests and make sure that happens, there has to be a certain amount of military flexing of the muscle. And of course, they will use this debt trap strategy. You don't need to conquer a country, you just own its economy, and you just own that country because via the debt that they owe to you, and you get away with it. So Pakistan has already fallen into that trap, Afghanistan next in line. So one by one, nations are falling like dominoes. There's Djibouti in Africa already, which has happened. So this is the largest strategy of China's expansionist plan, and they have to achieve this in the next 14 years because 2035 is the timeline that Xi Jinping has set. But what does this mean for India, ladies and gentlemen? What it means for India is that there is another pearl in that string of pearls which the Chinese have been trying to build that is also surrounding India. So this is I will not say Chinese, but it's the CCP's plan. Threat of spurt of anti-India terror operations, because a lot of this spillover of these jihadi outfits will happen, and then the controls will be with the CCP and the ISI or the Pak army, and they will continue to do this so that India continues to have these internal security issues and continues to deal with these matters. Then, and Jammu and Kashmir, just about 400 kilometers away from Kabul, not so far away. After the LOC and the LAC, there is another front that is now open, and there is also the threat for drugs, narcotics, which is going to be again another aspect where the Chinese will not pump in the money and they will tell the Taliban, grow the drugs, grow the opium, sell it, make your money, we will facilitate the sale across the world. So again, you are weakening the future generation so that they can't stand up to your challenge. And of course, India's investments and connect with the Afghan people, that also comes under a huge threat and jeopardy. In the meantime, before I bring in Andrew, the BRICS summit has put out a statement, ladies and gentlemen. The statement says, at the BRICS summit, in the presence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, along with the Prime Minister of South Africa, these are the statements that have been put in. And in this, and Brazil, they are saying the counter-terrorism action plan has been adopted. They are saying there has to be situation of the intra-Afghan dialogue has to be conducted, and there has to be situation has to be settled by peaceful means. But more importantly, Afghanistan should not be made a base for terror, and that it cannot become a terrorist sanctuary to carry out attacks against other countries. Now, the irony of it all is that two of the nations who are part of BRICS and who are also part of the permanent UN Security Council, they have already tacitly or overtly endorsed Taliban, proscribed terrorists by the UN, those with bounty on their heads charged with serious crimes against humanity. This lot has already been tacitly endorsed. Listen to what Vladimir Putin had to say.
US and its allies' withdrawal from Afghanistan has led to a new crisis, and it's still unclear how this will affect regional and global security. We are all interested in Afghanistan's ceasing to be a threat to the neighbors, so that the Afghan territory would be a source of drug trafficking and terrorism. We are interested in stopping migration flows. Evidently, Russia, just like its BRIC partners, has consistently spoken for establishing a long-awaited peace and stability on the Afghan soil. We are for Afghans living in peace and dignity on their soil.
So there is somewhere a legitimization of the Taliban already. Andrew, What is the China point of view? Is it purely about securing all the investment so far and trying to keep the ETIM away from Xinjiang? And you think you can do this by legitimizing the Taliban? Or when I say you can do this, the CCP can do this?
At the heart of the Afghanistan problem is a failed state. And the past 20 years have shown that sanctions and military measures are not the solution. That's resulted in the withdrawal of the United States. Now the United States have left, and there's a big mess left on the ground, threatening not only China in terms of terrorism, but the stability of the region. So I think Beijing wants a stable neighborhood. And I use the word neighborhood advisedly, because it's not just Afghanistan, it's also Afghanistan's neighbors, including India, including Pakistan, of course, and other Central Asian countries. Then how do you achieve a stable state? Military is not the answer. I think it's a question of building an economy and giving jobs to lots of these people and who are left in destitution and hunger and fear, and that has spread terrorism. So I think that the attack on terrorism and the measures against terrorism is the common ground of all nations.
If that is the case, then why is Masood Azhar not yet proscribed by the UN Security Council? Are you trying to say, so then will you bring stability? Will China, Russia, India, Iran bring stability by making sure that terrorists and those who are direct links with Al-Qaeda, with Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar are actually put on the seat of power? Or will you bring stability by ensuring that this scum is wiped out of the space of the planet and it is a democratic republic that is there? Do you want an Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan or an Islamic Republic of Afghanistan? We've just lost Andrew Kipiliung there. We'll try and get him back. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, what kind of a justification or explanation is this? That you want to bring stability, so let's put terrorists there in charge of affairs.
Well, they are bringing in stability. They are bringing in stability in their own fashion, which means the power of the gun. Look at the symbolism they are adopting. They are installing their government on the anniversary of 9/11. Day after tomorrow, their government would be inaugurated and certain foreign dignitaries would be present there celebrating that. So what is the symbolism that they are representing? The second thing is that China stroke Pakistan stroke Taliban now control some very important arteries of the world. You just mentioned the sea lanes. Now if they have control over Gwadar and if they have control further down right up to some parts of Africa, they can control the oil trade to India and Japan at their will. So we have an issue which could come up whenever there is a crisis between India and some of the other countries. So whatever Quad or things like that might do, but the fact is that the lifeline to India, Japan, perhaps some other countries would be in their hands. The second thing is they are going ahead with their plans of establishing virtually an airbase in Afghanistan, regardless of what the others may want. The third thing is that some of the most dangerous proscribed elements on the UN Security Council list are now in the government. They are virtually heading the entire principal cabinet of Afghanistan government. And UN has not even raised its voice. And UN in fact has gone a step ahead and taken out references to Taliban from its UN Security Council resolution. So what kind of a world are we waking up to? In fact, the day after 9/11, I was in Central Asia, and the leadership of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and other countries I went to, they said, Ambassador, mark our words, the presidents and prime ministers of those states. US will end up trimming the branches of terror in Afghanistan, whereas the roots in Pakistan will survive. That's exactly what has happened. And we are celebrating those roots by associating with them. But unfortunately, that is how the world is. We are now getting into a stage which will be just as dangerous as it was before 9/11. And the unfortunate thing is the world can do nothing about it.
True, and it's a travesty because the governor of the Central Bank of Afghanistan, who was himself a Hawala operator or a money launderer between Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, was found sitting in his office today, Colonel Selin, with an AK-47 between him and the laptop. That's how he was seen. And we are going to endorse such people. The UN is going to sit there and endorse and legitimize such people and say, run the government. You know what this is indicating, Colonel Selin? That and what this is going to trigger? Nations are now going to say that let's try and go all militia on governments. Authoritarianism is now going to rear its ugly head, not just in South Asia, but it will also happen in Africa. The junta is already active in Myanmar.
Well, I think the people who make the argument about stability, I mean, after all, it's a neutral abstraction. Everyone wants stability, but stability on what basis? Stability at what cost? The first Taliban government was relatively stable compared to the civil war that occurred, but there was great brutality and oppression, and as you point out, authoritarianism. Do we want that? Now, the other argument that was made that terrorism comes out of poverty has been discredited long ago. It comes out of ideology and political motives. After all, the greatest terrorist in our era was Osama bin Laden, who came from great wealth. So I think that argument has been discounted, and we need to look at other measures that we should take in terms of controlling the terrorism that potentially can come out of Afghanistan, and in particular Pakistan, which is the epicenter of terrorism in South Asia.
True. This is the picture that we've put out on air right now. The Afghan Central Bank governor, that's him, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a gun. He's got a gun between him and the laptop. That's how he's going to run the Central Bank of Afghanistan. These are the people to whom the charge of an entire country has been given. These people should have been shot dead point blank by the forces. Nations, militaries should have joined combined forces to wipe them out completely. That's not been done, Dr. Kondapalli. That's not been done. What's being done is everybody is sitting there and saying, will they serve our interests? Will they become like hired mercenaries to guard our pipelines, our dams, our infrastructure projects, and allow us to build roads that will help us cart away the mineral wealth of Afghanistan? So this is East India Company redo in the 21st century.
This is the conundrum that we are witnessing. While on the one hand we were saying that the BRICS declaration, the 13 BRICS declaration, mentioning about condemning terrorism, and side by side saying that we should not interfere in the internal affairs of Afghanistan, yet at the same time mentioning about the interests of women, children, and so on. Yet again saying that we need to counter terrorism. This is a huge contradiction in the statements as well as the reality in Afghanistan. There is a new element in the 13 BRICS declaration, which is using the space assets to look at the terrorists, and also, of course, as you mentioned, the drug proliferation as well as the other. So the statements are full of contradictions, both in Kabul as well as in the 13th BRICS declaration.
Yes.
And trying to accommodate so many interests in this. This is also in relation to the COVID-19 origins. Remember last May, the Australians were in the forefront in suggesting for the comprehensive, objective investigation into the origins of the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Australia has been penalized by China with the tariffs and other restrictions on the Australian businesses. India was also part of the WHO at that time, World Health Assembly, and the declaration mentioning about the investigation into the origins of the COVID-19, more in polite terms, which means that probably this will never be implemented in terms of the finding the origins of the virus. But the same kind of treatment that Australia received, that is not there because China is part of that declaration now on COVID-19. So there are contradictions on terrorism, on COVID-19, and on how we're going to tackle the economic and other problems that we are witnessing in the last 2 years.
Correct.
Because all the growth rates have been shut down, and except for China, everybody has the economic problem. China says it grew by 2.3% last year, and we do not know whether it is true or not.
Correct.
So there is a problem related to it. One of the things that I would also like to highlight is the Prime Minister's speech in the 13th declaration. He mentioned about the digital summit, water resources. It's important for us because of the Chinese construction of the dams across the Yarlung Zampo in the Tibet area, and we have concerns on the flash floods in Arunachal Pradesh, or the black soup that has come up early last year. So by having the first digital water resource ministers meeting in November this year, I think we are also trying to put it in a multilateral format. The other is, of course, the vaccines. This is in relation to China's vaccines being, not very effective, and Indonesia has to give a booster dose in addition to the Chinese vaccines.
Right.
But Brazil, which is a member of the BRICS, announced
no,
last week.
But the point is, Dr. Kondapalli,
12 million vaccines are rejected.
No, but the fact is China paying the cost for it? Has China been made to pay the cost for being the originator of the virus? Has China been made to pay the cost for giving a bogus vaccine? Has the WHO been pulled up to task for recognizing a bogus vaccine like the Chinese vaccine or Sinovac, but not giving approval to or recognizing Covaxin, which is shown far greater effectivity than any other vaccine in the world? So there are multiple questions that need to be asked, but net takeout as I wind up, and I thank you all, Colonel Selin, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, and Dr. Kondapalli. Perhaps the net takeout is, till the time we as a nation become a $10 trillion economy, we as a nation do not have to depend on anybody else. We as a nation don't have the power, the size, and the bulk to tell the nation, tell the others to behave. We will have to tolerate all of this, and all we can do is guard ourselves. We will not be able to exercise the kind of muscle that the Chinese are trying to exercise, because they have filled up their pockets over the last 30 years to try and push for what they are doing now. But here is it, ladies and gentlemen. Unless there is stability, they will not be able to complete their plans. All their plans have been thwarted for the last 3 to 4 years because of instability and strife in the region. And the more they try and think that they can control and remote control and via proxy control, the more they are going to be pulled into this cesspool and they're going to get sucked dry. It's already, the implications and the repercussions can already be felt in some of the provinces, key provinces in China. So it's not a great rosy story. But yes, those who are stable, those who are strong, those who are self-reliant, they will survive. That's the reality. We wind up debate number 1. We take a short break. When we come back, it's politics, Uttar Pradesh, closer home, Asaduddin Owaisi's divide pitch. Will he be able to rule with hate as the tool? Stay with us.